It's good to be on with you.
You were angry with the show or angry with me or 6 1/2 dozen. We'll get to all of that. But the reason why you're here is on Thursday of last week, 2 Navy SEALs came on the show and were critical of your boss, Eric Greitens, who is running for governor. Not to rehash what they said, but they were, and paraphrasing, they were upset with that Eric Greitens is using his Navy SEAL background and or resume to help promote his gubernatorial race, among other things. You were upset with that interview for a number of reasons. We wanted to give you a chance to come on the show to explain yourself and give you all the time necessary. So, first things first. What was so upsetting about that interview? What was the issue?
McGraw, let me be clear. I wasn't upset with you or any other reporter they interviewed with that day. I just felt like you were being misled and intentionally misled. These weren't just Navy SEALs that were coming and sitting down with you. This was an individual who was John Brunner's chief of staff, who has received nearly $100,000 from John Brunner's campaign, was paid as his chief of staff as recently as October 29th of last year, but yet the Brunner campaign says there's no connection. They keep changing their story. At one point they say he left in July, at another point they say he left in September. Just the other day they said there's absolutely been no connection at all. So it seems to me that it's just not possible that someone you've paid $100,000, who is your chief of staff and campaign manager for several months during the beginning of your campaign, is somehow not connected to you or your campaign. This same individual now runs a super PAC against Eric Greitens that's under state and federal investigation. So to come in here and just pretend like he has absolutely no political motivation and no political agenda, and this isn't connected to the Brunner campaign, I think he was misleading you, and I think it was an intentional misleading.
You were upset. You thought I should have been more forthful or asked the question and or disclosed that he was working for Brunner at some point.
Well, I thought it was an important distinction to make, that people understand that this is not just a Navy SEAL who's sitting here talking about falsely attacking Eric Greitens. This is someone who has been paid by one of our political opponents and is here to push a political agenda. We have had countless Navy SEALs who have stepped forward and said these attacks against Eric are false. The guy who killed Osama bin Laden, Rob O'Neill, came forward and said he knows Eric Greitens' record, and these attacks against Eric Greitens are sick, false, and cowardly. Ryan Zinke, the congressman in Montana, Navy SEAL, same thing happened to him when he ran for office. Several people came out and falsely attacked Eric. He stepped forward and said, I know Eric Greitens' record, and I give him my highest recommendation and endorsement. He's one of the best SEALs I know. So these are the type of people who are stepping forward. But you know what I think is more important is all of the SEALs and people that have served with Eric stepping forward. And you've seen the videos we've put out. You've seen the ads we've put out. Real people coming forward and saying, I know Eric Greitens. I served with Eric Greitens. He's one of the best people I ever served with. He's one of the best people I've ever worked alongside, and he'd make a fantastic governor. Those are the people that I think really matter, not people who are being paid nearly $100,000 by one of our opponent to push forward a false political agenda.
Let's put Paul Holzer aside for just a moment, because that's the one you're referring to. There was another man here, Drago, who was here, who was a retired Navy SEAL who has no affiliation with anybody. He came of his own volition to give out his point of view.
So, you know, you're absolutely right. I don't know Drago, and I don't know what the connection is there. I absolutely appreciate his service and his honorable service to the country. I listened to a few of the interviews he gave throughout the day after he was here with you, and he made clear that he did not know Eric. He didn't know anything about him. He didn't know about his service. He didn't know about his time with the Mission Continues. He just said that he found out that he was a Navy SEAL for 2 years and then wrote some books, and he was upset about that. All of that's not true. So it seems to me that he's someone who was potentially maybe personally connected to Paul Holzer, and Paul was able to rope into this because Drago made it clear, first in your interview, that he wasn't behind the video, that he found out about this after watching the video.
Right.
But then in other interviews, he went further to say he didn't know much about Eric Greitens' record. He didn't know much about his background. He didn't know anything about the Mission Continues or other things he had done in the service. He just knew what was in that video, which we released a response to and went through point by point and showed how that was false.
Right. I'll say the same thing I said to those two Navy SEALs that were here that day. It seems to be a fight that I don't want to be involved in.
Yeah.
Because it's two Navy SEALs, two groups of Navy SEALs, two different opinions within an organization which I have the utmost respect for. And I'm not going to sit here and tell one Navy SEAL what he should or shouldn't do to another Navy SEAL what he should or shouldn't do. So it's almost like a fight within the family, and I'm not going to sit here and pick sides or point who's right, who's wrong. It seems like they're having an issue. Let them fight it out.
Yeah, I agree with you there, but I also think it's important for people to understand that this is not just a fight among SEALs. This is a politically motivated false attack that has been put forward by Mr. Bruner and his team. You know, I think we need to let the facts sort this out, and that is Eric Greitens was a Navy SEAL who deployed 4 different times in the global war on terrorism. He deployed in Afghanistan in 2003, Southeast Asia in 2004, the Horn of Africa in 2005. He then was honored to be selected as a White House Fellow by George W. Bush. He completed his service as a White House Fellow and volunteered to go to Iraq as a Navy SEAL after completing his White House fellowship. When he returned home from Iraq after he was hit by the suicide truck bomb, he went to visit several of his friends who were wounded far worse than he was and realized that he had to continue to serve and continue to help make a difference with his fellow veterans, and that's when he started the Mission Continues in 2007 right here in St. Louis. He has always dedicated himself to serving others and to helping his fellow veterans continue their mission, both overseas in war and back here at home. He received the Combat Action Ribbon. He received the Purple Heart. He received the Bronze Star. And in 2011, he was named the Reserve Officer of the Year by the Association of the United States Navy. That's the #1 reserve officer for the entire United States in 2011 by the Association of the United States Navy.
But Paul Holzer did work for John Bruner in some capacity. Chief of Staff was his title. He says he crunched numbers, and that's the title they gave him. But
McGraw, they don't just give out the title Chief of Staff.
But he worked from best I can gather. He worked on the committee, on exploratory committee for John Bruner. Whether he was paid directly by John Bruner or some variation of John Bruner or through some PAC or whatever else, he worked on behalf of John Bruner last year. Does that disqualify him from having an opinion as a Navy SEAL on Eric Greitens?
Well, look, he was John Bruner's campaign manager and chief of staff who was paid nearly $100,000, not just during the exploratory committee. He was paid well into late October. The last payment on MEC was on October 29th. Just a couple days later, at the beginning of September, after he left, he set up a super PAC, Patriots for America, to start attacking Eric Greitens. His brother, who also worked for John Bruner's campaign, Adam McLean, also left and set up that super PAC with him. So what that shows is this was John Bruner and his team's plan all along, was for Paul Holzer and his brother, who were both employees of John Bruner's campaign, to leave and go set up this super PAC. That super PAC has been attacking us for months and is now under state and federal investigation, and multiple FEC commissioners say they are likely funneling money and they've broken the law. So yes, do I think someone who has been paid nearly $100,000 by one of our opponents and is now running a super PAC against us is not an unbiased person that can come in here and honestly talk about the election? Absolutely.
Drago and Paul Holzer's, one of their complaints or one of their issues is that Eric Greitens is wrapping himself up in the Navy SEAL flag, if you will, and sort of using that as his resume to become governor. He has an ISIS, and they were very critical of the ISIS commercial, which they said, this is their words, not mine, no true warrior would use that type of commercial. We see things where he's blowing stuff up, and I saw a commercial this morning where he's now boxing.
Yeah.
Isn't the criticism that he is kind of using his military record, his Navy SEAL, as a marketing mechanism to become governor?
You know, you pushed a few different points there, so let me address them one by one.
Please.
First being the ISIS hunting permits. I'm glad you brought it up. We've now sold out of ISIS hunting permits, and we've had to order more. We've sold them in all 50 states and have raised almost $30,000 off of it now. Those were released on the day that we had Rob O'Neill here, the SEAL Team 6 operator who shot and killed Osama bin Laden, who came in to endorse Eric and campaign with us at a few different events here in the St. Louis area. Ryan Zinke in Montana, Montana, the Navy SEAL serving in Congress, has issued something similar in years past. That's where we when we were talking with his team and talking with Rob O'Neill and our team got together and we're talking about something that we could do to promote the event. That's what we decided to do. So I'm not going to comment on no true warrior doing that. I think Rob O'Neill certainly fits the character of a true warrior. He's one of the most decorated Navy SEALs in the country, and I think he's an American hero. But I'll let the people be the judge of that. And on the topic of whether or not Eric Greitens is using his Navy SEAL resume for personal gain, McGraw, being a Navy SEAL is part of who he is. Just like John Bruner talks about being a Marine and a manufacturer, or Catherine Hanaway talks about being a prosecutor and Speaker of the House, or Peter Kinder talks about being Lieutenant Governor. Eric talks about being a Navy SEAL. He talks about being a humanitarian. He talks about founding the mission continues. These are all things he's done that have prepared him for what he's running for today, that have prepared him to lead. They make up who he is. And I think the people of Missouri deserve to know, what have you done? What is your experience? How does that shape what you believe? How does that shape how you're going to lead? And how does that translate to what your mission is for the state of Missouri? So absolutely, I think it is right for anyone to talk about experiences they've had in their life and how that shapes their views and their beliefs. And that's what we see from all of the campaigns running. And the people of Missouri deserve to be able to ask the tough questions and say, well, what about this? Or how did this that you did impact how you believe and how you would serve the people?
Was there any conversation about the ad where Eric Greitens is blowing things up that went live either the day of or right after the Orlando shootings?
Yeah, it actually went up a week before.
Okay.
It was up a week before the Orlando shootings. But no, we were very clear that Omar Mateen was a terrorist, a radical Islamic terrorist who killed 49 people, and we were not going to let the actions of terrorists dictate our actions. And I think the people of Missouri are smart enough to tell the difference between a Navy SEAL holding a weapon that was the same type of weapon they used in Iraq and Afghanistan to hunt terrorists, and a terrorist using a weapon to kill innocent Americans. We've got to have leaders who aren't going to be politically correct and back down in the face of terror and say we should take away people's Second Amendment rights, or that we should be politically correct and stop calling them radical Islamic extremists. These are people who are dead set on killing Americans. We've seen that we've seen that not just around the world, but right here at home. And this is the new face of the global war on terrorism. Is they are trying to bring their fight bring their fight here and make our home their battlefield, and it's something that we cannot be afraid to face and talk about.
Eric, Austin Chambers, our guest. Eric Greitens, campaign manager, here for a couple of more minutes. Let's go back to that ISIS ad for just a moment, because Claire McCaskill was on the show and she mentioned that Eric Greitens didn't know what office he was running for. If he thinks he's going to be fighting ISIS or searching out ISIS killers, he's running for the governor of Missouri, which has nothing to do with fighting ISIS.
Yeah. Well, I think with all due respect to Senator McCaskill, she's a liberal who doesn't understand the threats that we face. This is absolutely a threat we face here at home now. Governor Scott in Florida didn't expect that he was going to have to deal with this tragedy brought forth by radical Islamic extremists. It wasn't just in Orlando. We saw it in San Bernardino. This is now one of the biggest threats that we face, and anyone who tries to say that this isn't a threat we face is just either confused or is intentionally dismissing the threat that we face. So I don't put any stock into what Claire McCaskill says. She's just trying to influence an election, and she understands that Eric Greitens is in the best position to defeat Chris Koster in November, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
She also said that she loved him as a Democrat. She wanted to know what happened.
Well, you know what? He was born and raised a Democrat. He's been clear about that, and he said that the experiences he's had of running his own business and founding the mission continues and serving in the military and seeing how the government bureaucracy has hurt his friends who were coming home from war has made him a conservative, not by birth but by conviction. And but look, he is absolutely willing to work with anyone of any party who wants to advance our agenda. And bring more jobs to Missouri and improve education here and make this the number one state for veterans and make sure people's religious liberties are protected and that everyone's constitutional rights here are protected. So we look forward to taking on Chris Koster in the fall and beating him.
How come Paul Holzer said he's reached out to Eric Greitens and they can't meet or talk?
You know, I've been on the campaign now for almost a year. And Paul Holzer hasn't reached out since I've been on the campaign. He reached out early on, I think last June, to Eric when he was running John Brunner's campaign, and I don't think that meeting was ever set up. But none of the folks who are behind this once anonymous video that we now know John Brunner's and his team are behind reached out before this video went out or tried to meet or anything else.
To be clear, so I don't get yelled at by Brunner's campaign has said they have nothing to do with the video. They have nothing to do with Paul Holzer coming forward.
Yeah.
They claim and they say they didn't pay, they didn't orchestrate, they had nothing to do with his trip to St. Louis to go on the radio.
Yeah. Well, part of what they just told you is a lie.
Okay. Well, I just don't want to get in trouble with anybody else. I don't want the Post calling me up telling me I didn't cover all my bases. I want you guys to say what you're going to say. I'll disclose where I know the disclosures are, and I'll let the people decide for themselves. How come Eric couldn't come to the show today? And
we would love to have Eric on in the future, but you know what? I don't think that a paid political operative from the Brunner campaign who comes on and attacks Eric warrants Eric coming on.
Fair enough.
If they send a paid operative, you know what? I'm going to come on and I'm going to talk about it, because if they're sending staffers to trash Eric, then we'll send staff to set the record straight.
Aaron Austin Chambers, Eric Greitens' current campaign manager. Election day is August 9th. August 2nd. And not a day too soon. Austin Chambers, you're always welcome here. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, McGraw.
927, Big 550, KT.